My career path led me to unintentionally complete every step in Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow Quadrant, and in this video I'm showing you lessons I learned as a corporate employee, 1099 contractor, small business owner, and full-time investor. Let's get right into it. If you're unfamiliar with it, the Cashflow Quadrant is a concept from Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which is one of the best personal finance books ever. And the model explains the 4 types of jobs that exist. Rather than explain it myself, here's a quick 1-minute explanation that gets right to the point.
The Cashflow Quadrant is a simple model that explains that wealth can come from 4 different sources. Which quadrant you belong to depends on where most of your income comes from. The 4 different quadrants are E, the employee, S, the small business owner or self-employed, B, the big business owner, and I, the investor. The employee strives for security. He achieves financial success by climbing the corporate ladder. And you might find him say something like, "I'm looking for a secure job with nice colleagues and great benefits." The small business owner or self-employed, on the other hand, strives for control. He achieves financial success by becoming highly specialized in a demanding field. And you might find him say something like, "I'm looking for a job where I can be compensated well for my skills and time, where I am in charge." The big business owner strives for freedom. He achieves financial success by creating a profitable business system. And you might hear him say something like, "I'm looking for people that are smarter than me to run my business for me." The investor also strives for freedom, but he does this through allocating money to where it has the highest expected return. You might hear him say something like, "I'm looking for a place where my money can work for me in the most profitable way possible."
The overall goal of the model is to get from the left side to the right side where most of the wealth is created. Now, I wish I could tell you I had some grand plan in following this model, but to be honest, I didn't even find out about this idea until I was just starting my transition from the left to the right side. I'm going to show you my path in making that happen, as well as important lessons learned, and I really hope you can learn at least a couple things that may help you out with your journey as well. So I started my career here in the employee column, like a lot of us do, where I was in finance and accounting at a large publicly traded company in the heart of the financial district in downtown Boston. And yes, that's my actual building. Doesn't that just scream corporate? And yes, this is actually where my cube was, buried somewhere in here on the 8th floor. So I spent 4.5 years here. I was surrounded by some amazing colleagues. I was able to jump around to different roles. I was promoted multiple times. I felt extremely supported. And I know that this is rare for an office job, so I was confused why my anxiety was at all-time highs, and I had a feeling like I just wasn't having the impact or responsibility that I wanted to. I think I was just genuinely confused with the post-college reality that I had worked so hard in school just to be an easily replaceable cog in some giant system. I'm not sure if any of you all can relate to that, but to me it was pretty depressing. So it came to a point where I just couldn't deny I needed to make a move, and I made a total 180 from corporate life, which I'll show you next. But what I learned from this phase is that the traditional path of college, job, retirement really isn't as bad as some financial pundits make it seem, like Robert Kiyosaki. I was surrounded by a lot of people who were genuinely happy to be at work, and they loved the consistency, the comfortability that a W-2 job offered, not to mention generous benefits that helped take care of their families. So even though I needed out, I have a lot of respect for those who show up day after day, work their asses off. So this is not a knock on W-2 employees at all. Now that being said, if you are one of the many people that are unhappy in their hourly or salary role, and this mainly goes for younger folks, maybe 30 or under, it's really beneficial to stick your head out of the sand. Look for other roles, companies, industries that may make your 9-to-5 more tolerable, especially if you foresee yourself in that job type for your career. I feel like there's a lot of employees who just settle because it's easy. It's routine to just show up and do your job. It takes some work to find other opportunities and even more courage to make that leap. At this stage in your career, it pays off. Bounce around, get experience in other roles or industries, so you have a sense of what could better suit you if you are taking that W-2 path in life. So what did I give up my cushy salaried office job for? I dove into the world of real estate by getting my agent's license and a job at a local brokerage, renting apartments. And I wanted a huge change, and that's exactly what I got, because I went from being told specifically what to do and how much I make to no guaranteed income and very little guidance on best practices. Once I got on my feet, I ended up loving the freedom and responsibility. I had always been a hard worker, and performance-based pay really landed well with me. I ended up being one of the best performers in the company. So in a 1099 or subcontractor type role, you're basically running a one-person business because you're in charge of many different aspects. Like in my role here, I was responsible for the marketing, selling, admin, and also paying my own taxes, all while still trading that valuable time for money. And in this case, I was trading very valuable time for money since most of my apartment showings were on nights and weekends. Eventually, the real estate agent grind became too time consuming for how much I was making or wasn't making. So I'm going to show you how I transition out of that next. But first, my major takeaway from my 1099 role is the importance of structure. I went from an extremely monotonous routine in my W-2 to a self-paced sales job where it was easy to get up at like 11 a.m. just because you could. And it wasn't until I realized I needed to be stricter with myself and create a work routine that I became successful in my 1099 role. Now, this structure was a lot easier for me to buy into because I could see that when I executed it, it resulted in more money in my pocket. Whereas what made the structure hard to deal with at my corporate job was that I could never gauge how my actions contributed to that end product or goal. So it's like you're going through the motions every day, not seeing results. It's just incredibly frustrating. So right now is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting because it's where I officially started the transition from the left side of the quadrant to the right because I opened my own brokerage. And the goal of this brokerage initially was for myself and a few colleagues to still work in real estate but pay ourselves much higher commissions. But it quickly became evident that owning the business and having agents working for it created money even when I wasn't working. Now, at this time, I had read Rich Dad Poor Dad, so I was aware of the Cashflow Quadrant, but it really didn't hit me until I actually experienced the transition for myself, and then it made a lot more sense why this is such a powerful model. Now, it's easy to grasp the concept, but when you actually execute on it, it's an extremely liberating feeling knowing you started this sort of like machine that generates cash rather than trading your time for it. It creates a sort of addiction to this type of work because once you get a taste of that passive income, you're like, all right, what can I do to increase this? Like, how can I better my margins? How do I make this run more efficiently? That list goes on forever, but I can say once you get this entrepreneurial bug, it's really tough to go back. So what I did, I just kept improving the business and also improving my personal development. And I came across a couple concepts that helped keep me motivated and progressing in this quadrant as a business owner. Now, the first one I like to call ABL. And it simply means always be learning. And just because you figured out how to run a company doesn't mean that it'll be successful infinitely. You need to always be educating yourself on anything that can advance your organization or you as a person. At this level, you can even find a lot of free or low-cost ideas that you can implement to make your business run smoother and increase margins. I'm talking like process improvements, new technology, delegation, just to name a few. However, if you don't practice ABL, your business will eventually struggle, as competitors that do put in the effort will surpass you, and it'll make your life a lot more difficult. The second concept, which goes hand in hand with ABL, you can't really have one without the other, is a lesson I learned from Michael Gerber's E-Myth, and that is working on the business, not in the business. And I highly recommend this book to any small business owner, and I actually have it linked in the description, but the main point is to not allow yourself to get sucked into the day-to-day operations of the business, but rather envision yourself sitting on top of this entity, kind of looking down on all the moving parts to orchestrate them. This mindset is incredibly hard for a business owner that comes from being an employee in their field to owning a business in their field. But that mindset change allows your business to grow because you need to let go of certain duties. And you do this by hiring or outsourcing them. So in order to be a true leader or visionary, you need to take control of this aspect. If this interests you, I highly recommend reading the full E-Myth. I love this book. I actually give it to everyone I know who starts a business just because it is so valuable. I just wish most of the people I gave it to actually read it and implemented it, but you can bring a horse to water, you can't really make them drink, right? Now, thanks for hanging in there because I am finally onto the fourth and final quadrant, and this is where I became a full-time investor. I could do an entire video on this, but in a nutshell, I steadily had been building my real estate portfolio since 2013 through utilizing what's called the BRRRR method, which means you buy a property, you renovate it, you rent it, you refinance, and you repeat, you do it all over again. I was never hell-bent on acquiring as much property as I could. I wish I had been a little bit more aggressive back then because the market was great. But I consistently added to my property count over the last 10 or so years, and now it sits at 16 units, and it's my family's main source of income. I never had a master plan for real estate. I was just comfortable with it because I understood it really well. I liked the consistent cash flow that it produced. But when you look back over the past 10 years, you can see how powerful an investment it's been, because in addition to the cash flow, I was getting great appreciation, and I was also having the mortgages paid down by the tenants. Now, I could wax poetic about real estate for hours, and I probably will in future videos, but I'll spare you since we're deep into this one. But I will say that is why I always recommend real estate as an investment, and I plan to continue to grow and document my portfolio when market conditions become more favorable. They're just really tough in this current environment. The concept that helps me to this day as an investor, and really in life in general, is what I call the 1-5-10 rule. And it means that any decision I make, I try to determine how much it'll matter in 1 year, and then in 5 years, and then in 10 years. And this helps keep me focused on the long-term picture, because those decisions that have consequences in the long term will take priority over those that only benefit the short term. This is why I'll most likely prioritize investing and building businesses, because they have such an impact on the long-term outcome. This reasoning also works great for making personal or family decisions by minimizing trivial issues that in the long run are insignificant but may seem pressing at the current moment. So you guys have any other lessons or experiences that I may have missed? Drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. If you like stuff like this, do me a favor, hit that little subscribe button in the corner so you can get alerted on any new videos I put out. And if you want to take a look at some of my other material, here's a couple good ones you might be interested in.